Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. There's a lot of new people here. My name is Heather.
I'm Levi.
Yeah, we had a couple different channels shout out our channel this week and we received a lot of new subscribers. So welcome. This Q&A was planned and so it's actually perfect timing for all of the new people. We actually have been homesteading here on our 9.21 acres in southwestern Kentucky for about 5 years. This is our 6th summer growing a lot of our own food. We've got a whole bunch of dairy goats and a couple decently sized garden spaces, plus my husband hunts. And we have meat rabbits, and I do dabble a little bit into beekeeping. So it's a blast. And we have a really good time here on the YouTube channel, and we have amassed 33 questions for the Q&A tonight. So some of these are really quick answers and some of them need a little bit more detail. But before we get into it, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. So first things first is this weekend we are butchering 4 of our goats. We have butchered our excess dairy goats for 3 seasons now, and this season I have dedicated to actually filming a tutorial how to butcher goats from start to finish. Now it is something that I'm not going to be able to post just publicly here on YouTube. It is going to violate the community standards for the advertiser standards, the advertiser friendly standards. YouTube itself is not going to have a problem with it being on the platform. It's just not going to be able to receive ad revenue. And when you put a lot of work into it, it's nice to get a little bit of something back for your efforts. So I am going to put it behind a little bit of a paywall. Our members are going to be receiving it for free. So kind of look out for that. I'll be letting you guys know where to find that if you're interested. And of course, if you're a member, it's going to be up on the members wall.
We don't want to put it on the channel and risk too many people flagging the whole channel.
They wouldn't even the people that would flag it. It would be the fact that it got a ding. The fact that YouTube would flag it for not friendly for advertisers,
like it would affect the whole channel. It affects
the whole channel. Yes, and it's not because I feel like I necessarily need, it is nice to receive, an income for your input. But yes, if I posted it publicly, YouTube would see that as kind of a black mark. And it would affect the entire channel. And I don't want that. We don't want our whole channel being kind of, I guess, shadow banned. I don't know what it is. But anyways, we also got a question about our mugs and whether or not we were going to be selling any more mugs, and we are. So I'm actually running a pre-order right now. It's for this mug, but in the blue color. I'll put a picture of it right here, the mock-up that they sent me. This pre-order is going to close November 3rd. So November 4th, I'll be making the order through Sunset Hill Stoneware. These are handmade and they are gorgeous. I love them. And so when I place the order, it's going to take them 12 weeks to get to me, and then I will ship them off to you. If you are in the United States, I do have a payment link for everybody in the US to go ahead and pre-order their mug. If you are a member, I have a separate link for you. You're going to want to check the members tab for your link because our members get 10% off. But yes, once they get to me and I get them out to you, I would expect to get delivery of your mug in about early February. And as always, if you have questions, go ahead and leave them down below. Oh, goodness. One more thing. So I did get a question on one of our recent goat birth videos that wasn't part of this Q&A, but I thought that it was important to add in here because I imagine that there's a bunch of people that have questions that they don't ask, and this was a pretty good one. It was a little bit condescending, but if you'd like to know why I don't wear gloves while assisting my does, I'm going to tell you. Now, sometimes I do. This really depends on how deep I need to go in. If I'm just doing something superficial and I'm not going into the uterus, I don't worry about it too much. My main concern isn't really for myself. It's me introducing something into the doe that could cause her an infection. This particular commenter was concerned about a disease called Q fever, and I guess they had experienced getting Q fever from assisting a birth with a horse. And the thing that's really important to understand about things like this is, number one, we do disease test our herd every year. We don't test for Q fever, but if we had experiences where a lot of our does were suddenly miscarrying, then I could test for it. However, we don't really have a reason to test for Q fever here, so I don't. And even if our doe had Q fever, me being in contact with the birth fluids would be nothing compared to us drinking raw milk, because Q fever can come through in raw milk. And something like Q fever does aerosolize, so it's just in the air, it's in the dust. And humans contract Q fever by the aerosolization way more readily than they would by being in contact with birth fluids. And so it would just be a little bit silly, honestly, if I was concerned about Q fever to wear gloves, being that we drink the raw milk and it's aerosolized. Anyway, that is why I don't wear gloves. I'm not really worried about disease transmission in that way, and so I hope that it clears that up. Plus, I wanted to say, if a human gets Q fever, I think it's 50% of the time they don't show any symptoms at all. It might look like a little bit of the flu. In some immune-compromised people, it can be quite bad, but very often it clears up on its own without any interventions, and then the human is immune for life. So let's get into the questions.
What did you do or do you do for a profession outside of homesteading?
I'll let you answer that, because you actively still do something outside of homesteading.
I work for my little brother's business doing home remodeling and general repair work. And before I did that, I was in the Army for 8.5 years, got out 2.5 years ago about. Before that, I did the same thing I'm doing now, but not for my little brother, because he was
a baby.
16 when I entered the Army, so.
Yeah, and as far as me, I've had several different jobs. Now, both of us just have our high school diploma, with some college, but not enough. I didn't get enough college credits to get a degree. Did you?
No, I don't think I'm even halfway there. I have 28, I think, credits.
I don't know what I have. He's kept better track.
The only reason I know that is because I had to tell the recruiter. The number stuck with me for some reason.
But I was a bank teller for a while. I was a manager at a pizzeria for a while, a long time. That was my favorite job. I was a CNA at an assisted living facility, at a Alzheimer's and dementia type of facility. I loved that. I had night shift sometimes. That was less fun. I had stopped working as soon as we started having babies. I was able to stay home, and so I haven't been working for a long time. I have done some things from home, like I was a seamstress for a couple of friends that had some businesses that needed extra seamstresses to get some of the products and things out. Like I made baby shoes, and I made some diapers and diaper covers and things, and that was really fun. But that's that. Nothing really that necessarily bled into the homesteading thing besides you and your like construction and building. Yeah. That's made a big difference. You having that kind of knowledge has made a big impact on what we've been able to do here.
It's definitely saved a lot of money with certain projects.
Yes, like when there's someone's going to ask later what kind of infrastructure is needed for a freeze dryer. Well, when the freeze dryer was on its way and I realized, honey, we need a different plug and a whole different breaker for that freeze dryer. He's like, okay, I'll go to Lowe's. Where like ordinarily that would have been a call to an electrician for a lot of people. He was able to take care of that really fast. I mean, that didn't take long.
Easily have been a few $100s, like at least.
So it's been a blessing having that background for sure.
Is it worth having registered goats?
The only reason that it would be, honestly, is because most registered herds also do disease tests. And I think the number one thing that needs to be the big concern, especially if you're going to be drinking raw milk, is drinking milk from disease-free animals. So finding a herd that disease test that isn't registered is kind of tough. Usually that's going to be your registered herds. And also a registered animal, not always, but a lot of times, comes from a show home, and normally they focus a lot on body composition and things, and well-structured goats. They are built for longevity, and that can be a good thing as well. Now, it's not to say that there's not excellent unregistered goats out there, because there definitely are. It's just a little bit of a toss-up, and you want to kind of weigh your options based on what's important to you. But I think diseases and having a disease-free herd is the most important thing.
Are you happy with the breeds of rabbits you have? Or is there another breed you might want to introduce to your program for characteristics such as litter size, growth rate, efficiency, or hardiness?
Yes, so I really like our Californians. They have been awesome, and I really love the way that they look. I have had, as far as meat breeds go, Californians and New Zealands, and we have what we call our pretty bunnies. They're just kind of a mixed conglomerate of genetics, and they're beautiful. And I have bred some of our Californian does recently to some of our pretty bucks to try to see if we can get a little bit of color in the pelts. I am starting to do a little bit of experimenting and seeing what I can do with the pelts. Growth rate, they can't really beat like a meat specific breed, but I haven't really felt like I needed to venture out into other breeds because the Californians that we have been more than sufficient.
What kind of feed do all your goats get? Do you mix in things for the milkers? And do you only give grain when pregnant or milking?
I give grain to everyone all the time. And that is partially because I know that our forage out on our land is subpar. We live on old tobacco farmland that was farmed for many years, and they only really fed the land enough to feed the tobacco. Then they harvested the tobacco and the land was left kind of depleted. And a lot of the plants and things that we have on our land right now are evidence of that. We've got a lot of broom sedge and a lot of like weird scrubby brambly things that in and of themselves are signs of poor nutrition, but also some of those plants like thistles can really serve to bring up some of the nutrients that are lacking in the soil. And so we leave the plants that we can leave in order to help try to remediate the land, but the goats definitely need some supplemental nutrition. So I feed a Combotch milk maker goat pellet. I believe it's a 17% protein, and I cut that with some alfalfa pellets when I can have access to them, and I feed 2 parts of the goat pellet to 1 part alfalfa pellet, and that goes for everyone. And I think that's a little bit too much calcium for my bucks. Ideally with goats, especially bucks and wethers, you want them to have a 2-to-1 calcium to phosphorus ratio. So 2 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus. You can find that on the nutrition breakdown of the goat's feed. You also really want it to include ammonium chloride. And this balance in the ammonium chloride is just so they have a less of a chance of developing bladder stones, which can and does happen. We lost a buck to urinary calculi, and that was a big mistake. I knew that he shouldn't have been getting the feed that he did. I just didn't think that it was going to happen to us. It totally did. And that was a very hard mistake and a very hard thing to learn. A lot of people, when they have nice quality forage, they don't feed anybody but their milkers grain on the stand, but I do because our land is lacking.
Can you explain how you trained your livestock guardian dog to his boundaries? I remember you mentioned the flag system.
So this just was, I'm laughing because poor Buster is mortified of those little white flags. When we first got it, I think it's called Pet Safe. Do you remember?
That sounds right.
We bought the system, and it wasn't something that we came up with. I just followed the directions on what they said to do. But it's this underground line, and it makes a loop, and it's attached, it's connected to the collar, like the system is. And so if he gets too close to the boundary line, it beeps at him, and if he gets too close, it puts a shock through, and he's just trained that way. And so that the dog can learn the boundary, because it's hidden under the ground and that's not fair, they give you the flags as like a visual, and so he is freaked out by those flags because he knows when he got close to them, the flags bit him. And so now his collar is really loose, the little prongs don't even attach. I think the fence doesn't even have a loop anymore. So he's trained just with the flags at this point, so I can put the flags around places where I don't want him and he doesn't go there. So for instance, the kids' garden, he was getting in their beds earlier in the year. We just had to put little flags up and he left them alone. And then this fall, he started getting into my raised bed garden and laying down in the beds in there. I just had to put up flags around the garden and he stays out. It's just something that cause and effect. The white flags bite.
What is your number 1 bee tip to newbies? Don't fumble the box.
Don't fumble the box. That is a very good tip. Oh, I remember what it was. You'll see a lot of people suggest that when you get your new box of bees in the springtime that you should feed them. Don't feed them, okay? If you get them at the right time of year, there's going to be plenty of forage out there for those bees. What's going to happen is that your bees are going to build up incredibly fast. They don't just put away exactly what they need. They put away a ton of extra, and they'll build a ton of comb, and they'll make a ton of brood, and it can very quickly get overwhelming. If you just allow them to forage on what's out there, they're going to build up much slower, but that's going to be better for a new beekeeper. Our bees build up way too fast, and it was a lot for me to handle, because then I had to deal with figuring out how to manage swarming and doing splits and all this kind of, it's not necessarily advanced stuff, but it's extra stuff that's like hard to try to manage while you're trying to figure out exactly what eggs and larvae look like. Like it's just, it adds another layer. So my advice is to not feed them as long as there's enough forage out there. Now here we don't have to feed all summer long. Some people, there's a break in the summer where there's not really much flowers growing. It's called a summer dearth. We don't have that here. There's forage throughout the summer. So look at your local area, figure out what's blooming when, and make sure you don't have to feed before you just don't. But that's my advice, is don't feed them if you don't have to.
Do you have any tips for someone who's new to hunting deer?
That's a you question.
That is a me question. And the problem with that question is it depends entirely on where you live. Mm-hmm. We are situated between Hopkinsville and Clarksville. They're both relatively large cities, I guess. Mm-hmm. Clarksville has an incredibly large, dense population for the area. And so there's just always activity, always people, and the deer have become very desensitized to people. I don't have to be worried about scent masking. Like I could probably go sit out there in blue jeans and a hoodie and still get a deer because they just are so accustomed to seeing people. Somebody who lives in a more secluded area that doesn't have as much human activity is going to have to worry more about things like that. Depending on where you live, there's likely some local hunting clubs or at least groups of people that do hunt in that area. Talk to them, and the biggest thing we did was I spent countless hours on YouTube watching butchery videos.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what we did? And I would highly suggest someone do that if they need to. It was cold, we were miserable. There was one time where the power went out and we had headlamps. Do you remember?
I remember having headlamps. I don't remember why.
The power went out randomly, but we grabbed the shower curtain off of the shower and we put the deer on the table inside the house so that we could spend enough time with it without feeling like we were rushed because we were freezing and we couldn't see and it was dark. We brought it inside on the table and took our time, and I think that was good. Yeah. We trashed the shower curtain afterwards, but it totally worked.
Heather, what is your favorite mushroom that you have ordered and harvested so far? And will you be trying different varieties from that same mushroom company? And can you mention who that mushroom company is again?
Yes, that was Druidry Farms. You're going to find him on Instagram. Now, Anthony was in North Carolina doing work and drop-offs of supplies up to the Hurricane Helene victims very recently. I know that he was going to get back into the mushrooms soon. He had taken a brief hiatus. I don't know if he has done that yet. But as far as my favorite mushroom from him, I didn't have an amazing success with the pink oysters. They did pretty well, but they were probably my favorite. They were a little bit trickier than like the blue oysters or even the chestnuts that I grew. And I think the oyster mushrooms, the reason that I like them so much is they stay like nice and meaty. They keep their substance when they're cooked. Some of the other mushrooms, like the chestnuts, they tend to get a little bit, like fall apart a little bit more and stay less of a meaty substance. So any kind of oyster. They're also very beginner friendly too, especially the green oysters. Those guys just cranked out the mushrooms. I mean, I harvested from the blocks and then reharvested at least 3 times from one block. And so it's not just a one and done.
We've had the posts for putting up a garden fence for 3 years now, and my husband still hasn't gotten around to it. How would you deal with this situation? How do you and Levi come to an agreement on task priorities and financial investments?
This is definitely one that gets tricky because I think that it's not just a simple, hey, just ask him again or just communicate more clearly. Like there's so many very tricky little nuances to relationship that make this hard to just like give you our perspective on and so that you can replicate it. Because our communication has been very clear and open for many years. It just flows really nicely now. Like we'll go throughout the year. Like I know for a fact that Levi wants to put in like a grilling type, what is it, a pavilion?
Basically, yeah.
That he wants to do. So I know that he said, I want to do this. And I know that it's important to him. One of the things that's important to me is I really want to get the rabbitry redone, which it's kind of a similar project. It's like putting up some posts and some things. And so we have to just talk to each other and assess, okay, which one of those things that we both want to do takes priority, and very likely it's going to be the animals.
Yeah.
Every year we do get some kind of tax refund. And with that tax refund, we'll talk to each other and be like, okay, what bills do we want to really knock down? And what projects do we really want to knock out with this money that's coming in? And so we're just very clear about that. And then he has, I don't know if you've still got it. Have you written over there?
Yeah, but
he had, this is old, that's up there.
I don't know how long ago that.
A punch list. So we'll say we have these goals for this year. And so when he has an extra weekend where he's like, man, I really want to do a project this weekend, let me look at the punch list. And then he'll tackle the punch list. That was very valuable in the beginning when there was a lot of little things to do. And now there's less of that. But I mean, open communication is the key. I don't think... Like, I would imagine after 3 years, he might have forgotten, or he doesn't understand how important it is to you. And so I would bring it up, obviously lovingly. But if he isn't clear on how important it is to you, then you communicating that is the only way he's going to know.
I do wonder if some of it isn't a lack of confidence in the project. And he may have worked for a fencing company previously. I don't know. But I know there have been times where there have been projects that I've been tasked with that I really dreaded getting going on because I don't either know anything or know enough to feel like confident that I can put out as quality of a product that I would want to. And that has held me back before. So again, it just goes to communication, because it might be, hey, this is important to me. If you're not comfortable doing it, can we talk to a company to come in and you know, even a handyman, whatever, to come in and put the fencing up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just communication.
Yeah, that's really the top thing, is communication.
Do you guys have a special place for goats who cross the Rainbow Bridge?
We don't have like some kind of graveyard for the animals that pass. And I've spoken about this a couple times recently, but a lot of the times now we can get away with it now because it hasn't rained in a long time. But because of the way that our land is, many months of the year you can't dig a hole or it's going to fill with water. So, and that's normally like the butchering times of year and stuff. So we have had a couple different areas where we just lay animals out if they're too big, to like literally put in a feed bag and potentially bury. But sometimes when it's a baby that's passed away, I'll put them in the feed bag and they just go out on trash day. And I know that that's probably not the right answer, but it is an option. It is there. And leaving animals out on the corner of the property for buzzards and other scavengers that's really not what I want. That's not the most like ideal thing, but it's what we can do here. That's really our one option. Last year when Calamity died, it was December, and that time of year you can't dig a hole. No. And I hated that. But she was left out, and really it's very fast before there's nothing left. And it's not like there's this pile of bones back there that's like heartbreaking to see. There's nothing back there right now. And so that is a very hard thing that I think everybody who keeps livestock needs to think about. What are you going to do when a 150-pound animal suddenly dies? And are you okay with that? So very good question. And I wish I had a better answer. Like a more flowery, yes, I put them underneath the elm tree and it blooms every year and I think of my animals or whatever. Elm trees probably don't bloom, but we don't have that kind of a story.
Nope. You've mentioned less than ideal forage mix in your pastures. Is there a reason you don't do a more intensive rotational grazing to focus the goats on smaller areas to help push out the bad weeds and help increase fertility?
Yes. Cost. So it was, how long ago did we fence that in? Was that 2 years ago?
The pond?
Mm-hmm.
Almost 3.
Almost
2.5,
3, yeah, because it was when you got out of the military. That project was $6,000 or $8,000.
$6,000, and that didn't include any of the wooden posts because we got those from our neighbor from old telephone poles, and that would have been probably another $600 in wood posts.
And you borrowed the auger and stuff. So it was that alone, just putting in the perimeter fence, which wasn't even around our whole property. That was very expensive. And we've talked about doing some cross fencing. We just haven't gotten to it. Other things have taken priority. I do have some like electric netting and things, and that could work. I think that I have learned a lot about myself in the last couple of years with having some electric netting. It's like the idea that I could move it is really nice. Will I move it? Probably not, because there's a lot of different things going on. If I just had the goats to focus on, I would probably be doing a lot more, but that's not the case. It's the goats and the children and the gardens and the bees and the grass that grows incessantly throughout the year. There's a lot to try to take care of and manage. So we just focus on stocking density right now and keeping only as much as that land could handle as a whole. And we also feed bioworma during the heavy worm load months of the year in the springtime. And that really, really helps cut down the worm load.
What's the earliest you have bred a doe?
Right around 7 months. I'm assuming that you mean doe goat. Doe rabbit 4 months, but a doe goat around 7 months, and it all depends on size. It's more about size than age. This year we bred Alara right about when she turned 7 months, but she's 80 pounds. She's massive, and so you want them to be able to be big enough to pass the baby, and you also want them to be big enough where if they need help that you know you can.
About 9 a.m. I don't like waking up too early. The earliest.
I don't like waking up early, he's right.
What do I need to get started with bees? Book or channel recommendations welcome as well.
I would look at Frederick Dunn and his channel. He's got a lot of beginning beekeeper information. He likes the flow hives. I don't. I don't like them for several reasons. One of them being the thing is very heavy when it's full of honey. And to try to pry that off of the bees while you're trying to do a brood inspection is nearly impossible, and so I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't suggest trying to jump into something like the flow hive, because I feel like really understanding and going through the motions and fundamentals of like beekeeping as it was before contraptions like that is going to benefit a new beekeeper a lot. And then you could graduate to fun little things like that, but do it the old way first.
When and how long are La Mancha heat cycles? It's our La Mancha's first breeding season here, and curious how they would differ from Nigerian dwarf goats, if any. What size or age would you breed would-be first fresheners? So
as far as La Manchas go, La Manchas will cycle seasonally. So it's from about the end of August until about the beginning of February, where the stronger heats are more central to like September, October, November time frame. Nigerian dwarfs will cycle year-round. Now, they'll have heavier heats in the fall, but you can breed a Nigerian any time of year, which is one of the reasons that I keep them. Again, it's not really about size necessarily, but I have big Nigerians. I want them to be at least 50 pounds before I breed them. Some Nigerian dwarfs don't get to be 50 pounds when they're big. I would never want a small goat like that. Because I don't know that if that goat needed help, like real help, that I would really be able to do it and not have to call in a vet for like an emergency C-section or something. But I'd like my Nigerians to be 50 pounds. My mini La Manchas, if they're bred either to a Nigerian or another mini La Mancha, 80 pounds. If I'm breeding a standard to a Nigerian, they can be 80 pounds. If I'm breeding standard to standard, I want the does to be 120 pounds. But it's more about width as well of the back end. If you have a wide doe, they can handle being bred young, young-ish, as long as they are of size, like we talked about Alara before.
Why did you choose the goat breeds that you have, Nigerian and La Mancha, and not any other breeds, like Nubians, Boer, Kiko, etc.?
I chose Nigerian Dwarfs because of the butterfat. I had heard that they had the best butterfat quality, and I wanted to do things with the milk. I didn't just want to drink it in cereal. I wanted to make the cheeses and make the butter and do all the things. And Nigerian Dwarfs are very good for that. They also produce a lot of milk for their size, and they eat a third of what a standard goat does. So we can get a quart of milk a day out of a Nigerian Dwarf just milking once. And I can get 6 cups a day, which is like a quart and a half out of a standard. But then the Nigerian would have made higher quality milk on less feed, which is huge. And so that's why I like the Nigerians, as well as the fact that they're polyestrous, or they cycle year round, like I talked about before. So I can have some goats kidding in the springtime, and I can have a fall kidding as well, and keep ourselves in fresh milk all year round, which is great. And the La Manchas, I have them because I like them. I think they're funny looking and they're cute and they have huge personalities, but there's really there's nothing that made me like compare Nubians and La Manchas and said, oh, I don't like them. I don't like Nubians for XYZ reason. I just simply think that the little no ears that the La Manchas have are cute. It's literally that simple. And I thought initially that we may want like a meat breed of goat, but after eating quite a few dairy goats, it's not necessary.
If you had to do it over again, would you go with one breed of goats or still have the mix?
The reason I have the mix now is because I'm trying to breed for mini La Manchas, so I can get the best of both worlds. So I can get a larger capacity with the higher butter fat and the cute looks of the La Mancha. I love it. And if I can get that in a more like little compact package that is a great milk producer with high butter fat, that is the ideal goat to me.
What was the most exciting achievement or change on your homestead this year?
Our whole year was putting in tons of new raised beds in the greenhouse so that we can grow above ground, because we talked about how our land is mud during most of the year, and that is the time of year where a greenhouse really makes the most sense, during the fall and winter, and we just couldn't grow in there very well because of the muddy ground. So elevating our garden in there up off the ground in raised beds was the most exciting thing, because that fall garden is doing awesome. I'm so excited.
We did get the final 250 feet of fencing put up on our perimeter.
The neighbors did that.
Because our neighbor's cows got out and tromped all over the place over here before the sun was up.
It was horrible.
And he felt terrible.
I know.
And insisted that he would pay for whatever damage there was. There wasn't. There was just hoof prints all over the yard, like it didn't damage anything. And then he said he was going to put the fence up, and I just asked him that he let me get the gate because I wanted to get the 2x4 wire-filled gate so that smaller animals couldn't, weasel through a gate.
Oh, mainly dogs, because we don't really have our goats over where that fence is, but their neighbors, not the same neighbors with the cows, but different neighbors, their dog comes over here and he would cause more damage than a whole herd of Black Angus. So I don't mind the cat. Like, I've had a couple questions, or at least one question, like, what's with your neighbor's cows? It seems like they get out all the time. They really don't. I think every time it's happened, you've heard about it, which is why it seems like it's a lot. It's really not. I don't know why.
We're midway through October, and I think they've gotten out 3 times this year.
Which is way more than they normally get out.
And last year, I don't think it was
it's normally like once a year, and it's usually a calf that managed to get, because they have their fencing up off the ground, and sometimes if the calf is kind of laying up against the fence, it'll whoop right under. Most of the time it's been a calf, but the big cows have been out. This is the 3rd time this year, and I don't know why, but it's like, it's a thing. The cow people will tell you, it happens.
At least 2 of the times this year, though, has been because he didn't latch the gate.
Maybe it's this one too. I don't know. And maybe he knows that about himself, and that's why he wanted to put the fence up. Yeah. But the fence is up, and so it's fine. They don't traipse through the garden. They don't eat the blueberries, and we love our neighbors so much that it doesn't matter. It's fine.
How would you navigate disagreement with your husband about how many goats to keep? Struggling to find a compromise because I want to keep more than 2 does, but my husband refuses, mostly because of hay prices. Not to mention finding buyers for goat kids is very difficult. At least it has been this year.
I have a lot of goats. What do you think?
It's a few.
I have a lot. People ask me how many goats, and I said, I don't know. It's between 25 and 30 because it fluctuates a lot. I buy some, I sell some, we butcher some. Would you say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the fact that we butcher a lot of them and put them in the freezer helps soften the blow a little bit?
Yeah.
Because that is the best way to deal with unwanted goats that need to be born so that your doe can come into milk. But yeah, they don't sell well sometimes, especially when you have the funny looking ones, like with the no ears. It's a special breed of people that loves the special breed of goats, and it's not a lot of people. And so La Manchas are a hard sell. They can be cheaper because they're a hard sell. So if you like them, it's a good breed to get into because they're usually pretty inexpensive for a very high quality animal. But I think being able to compromise and being like, okay, but they'll not only provide us milk, but we could have a lot of extra meat going into the freezer. And I think with a lot of men, that's a good segue into, okay, this goat meat is going to be paying for some of the hay. Now, hay is expensive. It is stupid expensive. Last year, what was the most expensive we paid per square bale? It was $11.
11, I think, yeah.
And we can feed 2 bales a day. I feed about 1.5 bales a day, but depending on how many large animals, which we have a lot of them this year, it can be $22 a day. And I can say that if we did not have the revenue that we have from the YouTube channel, I could not have as many goats as I have, which is one of the reasons that I'm so protective over the channel and wanting to give out the butchery information, but also we can't afford to take a financial hit in that way because I'm essentially paying for them, and so I think that that's helpful.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he agrees. I'm just like looking at him, putting words in his mouth. But it's been my assumption that that is helpful, that the goats are not only providing a lot of dairy for a lot of our like cheeses and things, and kefir, and there's just a lot that we're not paying for the meat that I feel like they really do offset their cost, but the hay is still very expensive, and if you have to feed it year round, we would have a lot less if we had to feed them year round, but we don't. It's 200 days a year. I buy hay for 200 days.
If you're okay with personal questions, what do your kids think about this homesteading life? So our kids met one of my cousin's kids for the first time, and his youngest is the same age as our youngest. And they were telling him about, we have goats and rabbits and chickens and guineas and on and on and on. And he said, oh, we just have 4 dogs. My kids thought that was the weirdest thing ever. That all they had was dogs.
Because all their friends have farms. They just do. Like, a lot of their friends have farms. So I think it's just super normal for them, for everybody to have some kind of production thing going on. So when someone doesn't, they're like, what? So I think it's just normal. It's not like they're like, we're special or whatever. It's just normal. And I think they enjoy it.
Yeah, and they have chores, but they're not out, I don't know, breaking their backs, doing anything out there. So I don't think they have any reason to resent it.
No, and I didn't want them to ever have a reason to resent it. I didn't want to give them hard chores, like you have to go muck the barn. If they muck the barn, they get paid for it.
Yeah.
They do. They get $1 per 5-gallon bucket. And man, one day our daughter Addison wanted some kind of toy, and she put tons of buckets of manure in the pile.
It was like 25 or 30.
She was so excited to pay. It was like a series of books. Like it wasn't a toy. It was those books, those dragon books. She wanted to work for those so bad, and she was so proud of herself. And she did that because she knew she could get paid, and I was more than happy to pay her for books, of course. So I think they're having a good time here.
And is your husband on board with the homesteading life? I don't know, Heather, is he?
I hope so. Goodness. Yeah. I know that is a big hang up for a lot of people, is sometimes one spouse wants to do it and the other spouse really doesn't. Very frequently it's that the woman wants to do the homesteading stuff and the man has some reservations. Usually it's a money thing. And homesteading, is really expensive. It can be really expensive. You can do a lot of things kind of cheaply, but if you're not set up with certain buildings and infrastructures and things, it can be a lot more difficult to like get by. I mean, if we didn't have that water line that you put in, oof, and you know, that kind of stuff is expensive. So yeah, it really takes two, and it takes communication like we talked about before. And I don't know, it would just be so hard if you didn't.
Yeah. How much land per goat do you need? Can they graze on grass as a majority of their food or no?
Yeah, they can, especially if your forage is good. I know that there are places where you can send in your hay to get it tested to see what's in it, the protein content and things. If I can find the link for that, I'll put it in the description box. My mentor had sent it to me, and I never did send in any samples of our hay, but if there's enough protein in it, then they can really survive off of that well. And we're trying to establish some good grasses and things out there. It's just going to take us some time. But as far as stocking density goes, it's 5 standard goats per acre if you're not able to rotationally graze. And that is like the easiest on the land, as well as it's the easiest on the animals as far as like a worm load goes. Now, we do have quite a few bucks out in about a 2.5 acre space. They've eaten down the grass quite a lot this time of year, and so they're eating really close to the ground. So even though they're in a big enough space, they're probably going to be exposing themselves to quite a few worms because they have favorite spots in the pasture that they really like, and so they're frequenting those areas a lot, and they're eating really, really low to the ground. So you need to keep an eye on, because if it hadn't have enough rain, obviously your forage isn't going to be enough for them. That's our problem right now, is we had rain when Hurricane Helene went through, and then nothing after that. And so it does depend. You may have to see what's out there and feed hay as needed, but about 5 per acre. Usually grass is enough, but it does depend.
If someone, especially a family member, was giving you a hard time about choosing to live a less mobile lifestyle,
by way of traveling and things,
because of dairy animals, etc., how would you go about explaining your choices or lifestyle to them? If you have an answer, but I also have.
I have an answer. I don't bend for anyone. Like, I know what I want, and if someone's going to be criticizing me about it, that's not my person. And that's how I am, really. I don't have those types of people in my life, but I feel like if I did, I would distance myself, because I don't live my life necessarily to please other people. Like, I don't go about my life to make other people comfortable. I go about my life doing what I enjoy and what I love, and I keep the people around me that are going to be supportive of me, and everybody else can stay at arm's length. I know that sounds kind of brutal, but that's how I would be. I would guard my heart in that way fiercely if somebody was being negative about this. Like, no one could pry me from this. I would have to be pried from this kicking and screaming.
So that basically is what I was going to say. I listened to Dr. John Deloney, his podcast, and it's like a family and life advice show where people call in and basically lay out their woes or troubles that they're having, oftentimes relationally with others. And one thing he says very often in regards to situations like this is they don't get a vote. Mm-hmm. As an adult, you are capable and more than permitted to make your own decisions. Other people who are not very explicitly directly linked or connected to you don't get a vote in how you live your life. Now, obviously, if like you're doing something immoral or illegal, then some people need to get a vote.
Different.
But outside of those extreme circumstances, it's your life, and if you're not hurting anyone, don't let them hurt you, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, how could anybody see that is your dream, and that is what you love, and that's what you enjoy, and want to be selfish enough to pry you from that? I feel like there can be a balance struck, but there's like a selfishness about that I can't get past. on behalf of the other person. Like if it's your dream, I feel like someone who cares about you should be supporting you through that dream.
How do you store hay? Do you have problems with rodents in the hay or moisture?
Rodents, yes, all the time. Can't avoid it. Just, it is what it is. We've got outside cats now. I'm so grateful for that. It's not like the hay ever comes out smelling like rodent pee or anything. Sometimes we'll pull a bale off and there'll be a little nest in there, and we just feed the pinkies to the chickens and move on. The rodents really haven't been a big issue with the hay. Moisture sometimes is. Right now I have like we call it the mower shed because it used to keep our lawnmower in it, but I've put hay in there. There is a leak in the roof, so part of the hay that's in there is moldy, and I know it, so I'm picking off of the parts that are not moldy because goats cannot have moldy hay under any circumstances. But generally, I will keep about 30 to 50 bales at a time, sometimes in my barn and sometimes in that shed, and I have to go every month to go pick up hay. Now, we are fortunate that we have a really great hay source that keeps huge barns, beautiful, dry barns. There's never been a problem with that hay, and we are able to go and make trips throughout the winter in order to get the hay that we need, because we don't have enough storage here to just put away all the hay that we need for the winter. We would need 450 bales, probably minimum, to get through middle of October to middle of April, feeding as many goats as we have. Our Amish friends store it for us, essentially.
Yep.
And they have really nice barns, and they do a great job.
Do you keep track of how much milk you get each day?
Nope. I don't. Some people do. Some people like to weigh it and stuff. I don't. I'm just like, oh, that's nice. I know round about what we get from each goat, but I don't measure it.
How do you keep all the goats' names straight when you have so many? I don't.
He does it. He did pretty good. Last year we took a video on running around with all the goats and figuring out if he knew the names, and you did a lot better than I thought you were going to do. I didn't think you knew maybe 2 of their names because I had talked about them so much. Like Elpis, I thought you'd know. And I don't know, Havoc. I think you didn't know Havoc. I don't remember how it went. I didn't start out with 30. I started out with a few. And then I knew their names. And then they had babies. And I learned their names because I gave them to them. And then they had babies. And I learned their names. And it's a gradual thing that happens. It's like, how do you remember all the names to your friends? It's the same.
What infrastructure is needed for a freeze dryer?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. Now, if you go, I'm going to talk about Harvest Dry because that's the only freeze dryer that I have any experience with. But if you go on their website, which I do always have a link to, it's our affiliate link in the description box of all of our videos, you can look. And under certain size freeze dryers, they talk about what's required as far as a plug or the breaker. We have a large sized freeze dryer, and that one needs its own, what is it, a 20 amp circuit?
Dedicated 20 amp circuit, so nothing else can be plugged into that outlet on that breaker.
It is not, like, it's up in the sky and it's got the freeze dryer. We talked about that before, he put that in, and that was a blessing. I don't think you need anything special for the medium freeze dryer, and the medium freeze dryers now fit 5 trays, whereas before they had 4. My large has 5 trays. Now they're longer than like the medium, but I can't remember who I was talking to, but someone asked if I had any freeze dryer regrets, and the only regret that I have is getting one as big as we did. Because now I would say something different if we had like bumper harvests of tomatoes or something again this year, but we didn't. But the only thing with it is you have to fill it all the way up in order to run it, and sometimes it's hard to figure out how to fill that large freeze dryer. When I want to freeze dry some things. Like now that I have 80 pumpkins, cool, I have stuff to fill it with. But if I only have 3 or 4 goat livers and I don't really want to freeze dry anything else with liver because I don't want it tasting like liver, that gets a little bit trickier.
Are onion scraps good for goats?
I have no clue. I know that my goats probably would not eat it. Goats will not just eat anything, contrary to popular belief. It took years for them to eat pumpkins. I have tried to feed my goats pumpkins. Now, they're eating them this year, but those Dutch fork pie pumpkins are very sweet. And I think that's why they really go after them. Regular old jack-o'-lanterns and things, they could care less about. But I don't think they would try to eat onion skins. I don't know that it would harm them. You wouldn't want to give them anything moldy, and sometimes onion skins can have a little bit of mold and stuff in them. I don't think they would eat it.
How often do you have to trim the goat's hooves?
I trim them every 2 months. this might differ depending on what your goats are walking on and stuff. But I last did that when we did our disease test in August, and it's time for me to do it again. People had asked me to do another goat introduction video so we could talk about the herd and who's who, because we have a lot of new people that don't know our herd. So I figured I would wait and do the trimming, because I have to get everybody on the stand anyway, and do an intro then. So expect to see that soon.
How many goats per year do you normally plan on butchering? You may have answered this question before, but also, is it worth butchering the dairy breeds?
It is worth butchering the dairy breeds, because we've gotten a surprising amount of meat off of our dairy goats that has been worth it. And I think part of what makes it worth it is most of the year they grow out on milk and grass. There's a little bit of grain, because like I said, I feed everybody out grain, but it's very minimal for the meat that we get. And I'd like to try to get 4 goats minimum, 4 to 6 in the freezer every year, because I feel like we can go through that in a year. I could go through more, but I feel like I would need a minimum of 4. Yeah. And the mini La Manchas are quite sizable. I've been very happy with the way that they've grown out over the course of a season compared to, was that a ladybug?
Yep.
Okay. Compared to like a Nigerian dwarf. And someone else down the line, and I guess we could skip this question, I could talk about it now, asked if butchering a Nigerian dwarf is worth it. Yes. Now, we have butchered a couple full-size Nigerian dwarves, and when we have gotten the meat ground, it's been 16 pounds without the bones. So with any dairy breed dairy goat, you can expect to get about 35% of the live weight back in bone-in meat. And then if you take the bones out, obviously you get even less than that. But to me, even the 16 pounds on a Nigerian dwarf is worth it. This guy up here, Odie, you see him up there? He was 3 years old when we took him to the butcher, and the butcher did that the cape cut for us, and he packaged up all of his ground meat and only charged me $100 for the cape and for all of the ground meat. And I felt like that was way worth it.
Have you had any idea of potentially selling freeze-dried goods for humans or animal consumption?
I have sold a few things from our freeze-dried food. Normally, our member section hears about it first, and if it sells out, it doesn't get announced to the regular channel. So I had some tea that I freeze-dried and sold to the members last year, and I had some elderberries that I freeze-dried and sold to the members last year. They bought it all up. I have some eggs freeze-dried, but I think that there's rules. There's like the cottage law. I have been trying to look into the rules and just haven't yet. It's really not on my priority list to provide food for the public. So it's not something that I've really seriously considered. But when I do have access, I do kind of throw it up on our website, or I'm going to be starting an Etsy soon, because our website is under construction. The people building that are moving across the country. And so that's taking a little bit longer to get put back together than we had originally thought. But no, not really. I guess that's my answer.
All my does are too young to breed, so would it be okay to go ahead and give them cobalt block and minerals?
Yeah, I keep my minerals out all the time, and so when the babies feel like they get the gumption to go lick the block, they do, and they're fine. If they don't need it or want it, they won't take it, and it's not going to hurt them to lick off of it.
How would you defend your goats from a die-hard sheep lover or goat hater?
Like, why am I talking to this person? They hate goats? We're not friends. Like, I don't know. Just like we kind of talked about before, like, I just don't surround myself with people who are going to be like that. Like, if they're genuine haters. Like, my friend Megan and I will banter all the time about how stupid the La Manchas look with the little ears, how they look like dinosaurs or whatever, and back and forth about the different breeds, but we're not serious. But if someone was seriously like, ew, goats are nasty, cool, I guess we don't have to really get to know each other super closely then, now do we? So I wouldn't really probably try to defend myself. I wouldn't feel like I would need to defend myself, because I know I love them. People have asked me before, why did you choose goats over sheep? And the only reason is I know that goats can have more capacity in their milk, and really the number one goal for me was the dairy. The meat came as an awesome secondary, but the main goal with the dairy goats was the dairy. So, and I wouldn't mind getting into some kind of fiber, but I talked about, like, when the kids are gone or whatever, I could have some kind of like wool hobby, but not right now. I don't want to take on another thing like that. So y'all, this is a long one, and Levi is ready for bed. But those of you who have been here a while know that at the end of our Q&A videos, we like to give something away. So this week I have, this is the original Sunset Hill stoneware mug that we got, one of the samples that we got. And we ended up not going with this size because it's just a little small. This is 12 ounces, but it's nice. I have used this. However, I would like to give it away because I don't reach for it anymore. I've got my big one. This is the shape that we're going with now. Remember, the pre-order is blue, but I would love to give this away, and I do not mind sending it overseas or anything. So if you happen to want to enter to win and you live like in Australia or something, that is fine. Definitely enter. I will send you this if you win. And in order to enter, what should we ask them about?
What is their favorite Halloween candy?
Okay.
I don't know. It's
Halloween.
seasonal.
Halloween. Well, it is though. What is your favorite Halloween candy, or do you have one? That's a good one. I'm one of those people that kind of likes candy corn. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I know a lot of people don't like candy corn, so I figured I would put that out there as a fun fact. What do you like?
Butterfingers.
Butterfingers. Yeah.
It's hard to beat.
That is. So let us know your favorite Halloween candy or candy in general down in the comment section. And in 1 week from today, so today, this is going to go up on Friday. Next week on Friday, I will go live and announce, we'll do like a random comment generator live, and we will pick the winner of this mug. Now, just in case some comment bot happens to go down into the comments and tell you that you won, you probably didn't. If you see a comment from someone that looks like they're me and you click on their picture and it comes up to where they have no subscribers, that's how you know you've got a bot talking to you. So I will let you guys know who won with my face on the live stream, and then I will go back and comment, like, just in case the person doesn't happen to make it to the live. But make sure who's ever speaking to you is actually me by verifying and clicking on that account and making sure that everything looks right on that page. I think it's time for us to close this out and go to bed. This was a long one, but I wanted to answer every question that we got. And we got quite a few. Remember, if you want to pre-order a mug, I have the payment link in the description box for you. And the pre-order is going to close on November 3rd. I'll leave it open throughout the 3rd, so it'll close like 11:59 p.m. on the 3rd. I'll place the orders on the 4th. We'll get them in, and they'll be in your mailboxes in early February. Ta-da! See, that's not bad. I can trim that down. We're going to do good.
Okay.
Okay. He says, thank you for saving me. Oh, thank you for saving me.